So I think the last where we stopped is currently around module 6. And
Yeah.
module 6 talks about it talks about like advanced project management techniques, which involves Scrum, Agile and Scrum methodologies. And I think I spent some time explaining all of that in the last class. I don't know if you
Yeah. Yeah. I saw all of them in the something.
oh you saw all of them there. Okay, that's good. That's really good. That's really good. All right. So we'll continue. Do you have any questions on those at
Not
all?
now, later. Yeah.
No questions. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I'll crack on.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So can I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I'll crack on to progress with module 7. So module 7 is all about project portfolio management, and which has to do with prioritizing projects and resource allocation. We've talked about resource allocation when we're discussing project planning. So prioritization techniques is what I intend to teach you and the rest of the team. The other topic is balancing strategic goals and operational needs, and then managing dependencies across multiple projects. We've talked about dependencies. Dependency is something that we discussed during the project charter. So if you go back to the project charter, we talked about dependencies and how to manage that. So we've already looked into those ones. Let me let me share my screen. So I'll go through a slide when it comes to module 7. Um, but most importantly, I'll show you a practical sort of aspect about how we do prioritization. If we can't finish it today, we'll continue on Friday. So module 7, advanced project coordination, portfolio and optimization. So what does this really mean? Yeah, what does this mean? So when we say project portfolio, it's um it's basically like a governance. So how do you manage multiple projects, right? How do you manage multiple projects? How do you distinguish between project and a program? Um, and then how do you govern most of the projects that you are managing? So let's look at some traditional view. I intentionally prepared this slide like this so that we can show you example of what used to happen in the past and some of the modern strategy when it comes to portfolio management. The traditional aspect, as is implied, says that it's a centralized management of multiple projects aligned with organization goals. Okay, so it focuses on selection, governance, risk management, value delivery across our projects. These are some of the keywords that we've dealt with in the past. So when we talk about portfolio management, you're talking about how to manage multiple projects that aligns with organization goals. Okay. Now, the you must understand what that sort of central management of the project portfolio (PPM) what exactly it means, the purpose of it. These are things that you're going to get out of this session. The governance structure, whether you're using the project management basic concept or you're using the lean portfolio management, there are different aspects, different sort of concept to this. Portfolio performance metrics, which is returns on investments, strategic alignment, and then risk adjustment value. Then traditional processes are mostly around Microsoft project. These are the most, I think we've talked about the project management tools. Jira has been around for a long time. Monday.com is there. PlanView is there. But these are all tools that help to facilitate how we centralize and manage multiple projects. If you notice the Jira platform that I showed in the last class, you will see that we actually have multiple projects on that Jira. It's not just one that we manage on them. So you can use systems such as Jira to be able to manage multiple projects. Um, so For instance, in our own IT company, for instance, we deal with we manage multiple customers. As I speak with you now, we have about 3 to 4 websites projects. We're working on web application projects. So of course, so we have a strategic sort of product manager that is in charge of that. Um, and we are able to use our project management tool to govern how we manage each of these projects. Sometimes we use Excel sheets to manage them depending on the size of the project. Sometimes we use Jira. I've showed you that you can actually use Trello. You can use Lucid Charts. It depends on the ones that you are more comfortable with. But of course, you must have an idea of all of these different tools. There is the modern view. So I've talked about the traditional view. There's the modern view as well. The modern view is, using AI to drive your management. So using AI more of a predictive analysis and helping to fast track the way you manage things. So using AI-based tools. So that's basically the future. That's where most of the technology are right now. AI is driving lots of sort of enhancements across many systems. Real-time data, agile portfolio. Agile is one of the techniques that I showed you in the last class, which is agile and Scrum techniques. Um, Ensuring that project, of course, aligns with the strategic planning cycles, the lean governance, um, and continuous value streams. So, do you have any questions so far about this foundation that I'm painting? You're on mute. If you're speaking, you're mute, but I'll crack on. I believe you're good. You can drop me a message if you're not able to talk. Okay. So, in terms of prioritization, so prioritizing projects and resource allocation. So, projects are prioritized based on, of course, what will be the return on investment? How urgent is it? What are the cost benefits, right? And does it have any sort of executive influence to it? So there are many reasons why you want to prioritize projects. So it depends on the returns on investment, depends on the urgency, it depends sometimes on the benefit they're going to get, the cost benefit. It depends on if there's an executive order that you have to work on this now, you know. So that's mostly kind of the traditional view of why, how projects are prioritized. And then resources are assigned using Gantt charts, resource histograms, and capacity planning. We've done all of this in the previous sessions where we talked about project planning. We talked about the financial aspect, how we plan resource allocation. All of that is in the previous recording. So please make sure you catch up on that. The modern view, so in terms of modern view, there's what we call dynamic prioritization frameworks. So like the weighted shortest job first, that's from a SAFe framework. SAFe is a framework in project management. You might want to look at it. SAFe basically introduced what we call it's like a project delivery train where you are able to set up teams to manage multiple like enterprise scale projects. So you might want to, look into SAFe. It's a framework itself as part of project management. There's also what we call the Moscow method for Agile. So Moscow is it's been around for some time now, but it's still very relevant. So it's must have, should have, could have, or won't have. So it's a way that you prioritize whatever you're trying to work on, maybe delivery, you want to deliver a solution, or you have some bunch of requirements, and you feel you want to ensure that you're starting with the most important one. So you can use the Moscow technique, which I'm going to share more details of the practical aspect of that. You can also use resource management softwares like Smartsheet. Smartsheet is very popular, very popular. I've used it with some other organizations. So please take note of that. It's a great tool. It's a great project management tool. We have Microsoft Project, which is that has been around for quite some time as well. So um, so how do you manage available resources against project requirements? That's a tricky one that requires a lot of strategy and support from your stakeholders. You have to make sure, I think when we're talking about project planning and towards execution, you have to make sure that you have your available resources to be able to meet the demands of your project, or else it will impact on the delivery of that project. and it puts the project at risk. So it's very important that the stakeholders are well informed and part of the entire planning of the project from the beginning. Okay. I'll show you, like I said, we have a framework we have designed in Gurugeeks that we use to manage our prioritization. So I'll show you that in a moment. I just want to set some foundations first. So in terms of resource conflict, um, so how do you handle bottlenecks, competing demands for limited resources? How do you manage those well, kind of maybe um, leveraging on both the agile and the waterfall methodologies? I hope you have an idea of that. I think we spent some time explaining that in the past. When we use the waterfall approach, I think we use the construction kind of scenario to explain that. Okay. Um, so these are things that we keep in mind. We've talked about resource, different phases that you go through when you're managing projects. There are times whereby there will be conflict. You go through that phase, you go through the phase of people now starting to understand their role and the purpose of the project. So there are different phases that you go through. We dealt with that in our previous session as well. So these are just kind of pointers into the things we're talking about. So let's see. So balancing strategic goals and operational needs. So traditional view says that often managed through strategic planning cycles and annual budgets. And sometimes there can be conflict between long-term vision and short-term deliverables. So there's this back and forth sometimes about project planning where we're not able to separate what exactly is the long-term vision and what exactly do we need to do at the short term. It's very important that that is understood. So strategic goals are mostly very, very clear. They are specific. Um, Operational needs are basically conversations about what do we need to put in place to ensure that we are able to achieve or to attain or to accomplish these strategic goals that we have. So you must understand what your goals are, and you must be able to understand what are the operational needs, the things that we need to keep this life cycle running. All right, that's very, very important. Um, the modern view emphasizes on continuous strategic alignment, especially in an agile organization. That's what we taught your team in concerning agile and scrum. So we progress iteratively with feedback. We don't just go away 3 months, 6 months, and then come back to say, oh, here's your project, here's your no. So we make sure that we are keeping every key players, every stakeholders informed about what we're doing, so that there are no surprises all of a sudden. So it's making sure you have that continuous strategic alignment with the goals of the stakeholders or the business. Um, so you can also introduce what we call OKRs. So that's objectives and key results, and a balanced scorecard to balance execution and vision. So OKRs are very, very important. You must have what exactly are our objectives and what should be the key result associated with those objectives. That's very, very important. Okay. So let me So managing dependencies across multiple projects, I've talked about this, like I said, during the project charter explanation. So you can use different sort of diagrams like this one on the screen. It's called network diagrams. You can use that to explain. But the whole concept of this is that let me just keep it simple. So for every deliverables that you're working on, that you're trying to achieve with your team, sometimes there are some things you want to do, but the delivery of that particular task might not be with the person that needs to do it. It could be that there's a part that the person needs to play, but there's somebody else that needs to build something like a prerequisite before that person can actually complete their task. So that means that becomes a dependency on on the other person. So you must be able to work out what are your dependencies, because if the dependencies are not sorted, you will likely get stuck when you get to that particular task. So in your project management tools, there are opportunities for you to add a dependency on every ticket to say this is dependent on this particular ticket. So until this one is done, we cannot move to this one. It's very, very important that you have that idea. That's what this whole thing is just talking about. I hope that that is clear. Any questions, Precious? Okay. I'm putting something in the chat. Okay. You're compiling them. Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. You can always share them later on. So types of dependencies. We have the technical dependency, we have resource dependency, we have schedule-based dependencies between projects. Sometimes there could be, yeah, I think the technical one is it depends on the project you're working on. Not all projects are going to be technical. You can be a project management in maybe an healthcare sector, for instance, which might not necessarily be technical. So, but it could be around resource, it could be around schedule based. So you must understand what your dependencies are, for instance. Communication is very important in project management. I've mentioned this during the introductory session. So you must be able to work with cross-functional teams, people that are not necessarily working in your department, and be ready to share information. Tools. So of course, you must master your tools that you want to use to manage your projects. It's very important because that tool will allow you to be able to monitor your progress and be able to manage your dependencies. In fact, those tools are good because they'll be able to see metrics about how you are progressing, and you can easily identify any risk and a plan to actually remove any necessary blockers that you may be having. So all of this is part of taking ownership, responsibility, and then team management as you're going to do all of this. Okay, so let me, as soon as I'm done, okay, that's it. I think that's basically what we have. Now let me quickly move on to the practicality of things. So let me bring up um, let me bring just give me a moment. I have like I said, we have a template we're customized in Gurugeeks that we use to teach prioritization techniques. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. All right. So let me bring this on the screen and give me thumbs up if you can see my screen. Give me thumbs up if you can see my screen. So I hope you can see it. Okay. All right. So here is a very simple, a custom built prioritization techniques that we have. So what we've done here is that we have combined multiple prioritization techniques into one documentation. And we have also been able to merge some of these techniques to be able to use them in order to get priority of what we need to be doing, let's say in whatever project that you're working on. So in terms of prioritization, let's understand what that means. What does prioritization means? Prioritization means order of importance. It means order of importance, doing things that are more important than the one that are less important, and understanding the sequence. Do you understand that? So why do we need to prioritize? The thing is that depending on whatever you're working on, it could be a wedding, for instance. Imagine you're planning a wedding and you decided to make a list of all kinds of things. In let's say typical African wedding, particularly Nigeria, you will see weddings that they will tell you you have engagement, you have introduction, you have the wedding, the church wedding, you have the reception. So let's imagine that all your epics are the listed ones that I've mentioned now. So your engagement is an epic, your introduction is an epic, your church wedding is an epic, and your reception is an epic. Under each epic, you have your story. So what are the things that you need to do? Let's pick one epic, for instance. Let's say engagement. What are the things that you need to do? under the engagement. You need to, of course, agree on your date. So you need to speak to multiple people to agree on dates. So speaking to different people can be your task. Your stories can be titled as communicating with family members and stuff like that. Then you start to list out the people, the different tasks that you need to do. Then under the same engagement, you have things like purchasing of ashwebi, right? So there should be also we have different categories. You have your parents, you have your in-laws, you have different people, different groups, associations that you need to choose for. So again, that's another sort of story, and then you have different tasks underneath that. Now, by the time you start to list everything you're trying to do under engagement, and you list everything you're going to do under reception, and you list everything you need to do under church wedding, the question now is, where do you start? Because everything seems very important, yes or no? Of course. So the question is, how do you start? Where do you begin? That is exactly uh why prioritization is very important. Okay, that's why prioritization is what very important. So look at this. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what are the factors that leads anyone or any organization to want to prioritize? Because for just like I just explained to you in a scenario, there are many requirements that looks very important that needs to be done, but you cannot do everything at the same time. So why can't you do everything at the same time? Because sometimes there can be some constraints about limited resources. There might be some constraints around budgetary constraints. There might be some constraints around time, some visibility, which all contribute to the need why we need to prioritize. So when we talk about prioritization, what then are the eight factors according to Babok 3.0? Babok is like a standardized documentation for project management. We also have something similar for business analysis as well. So what are the eight factors that influences the prioritization of requirements? Number one, benefit. You must know the benefit of what you're doing. So it's the advantage that businesses accrues as a result of the requirement implementation. So the benefit derived can refer to functionality, quality, or strategic or business goals. So what's the benefit? So benefit is one of the factors that will let you determine the priority of a thing. Number two, penalty. So penalty is like a consequence of not implementing a requirement. So it could be that you might lose you might, put yourself in danger of regulatory penalties or poor customer satisfaction if you fail to deliver that thing. So because of that, you have to prioritize. Sometimes it could be the cost. So cost is the effort and resources that are required to implement a requirement, right? Is the effort and resources required to implement a requirement. So resource can refer to a finance, manpower, or even technology. Risk is also one of the factors. Risk is the probability that the requirement might not deliver the expected value, right? So this can be due to various reasons, ranging from difficulty in understanding the requirements to implementing the particular requirement. These are factors that determines that we prioritize. Dependencies are there. We talk about dependencies. So dependency is like a relationship between your requirements. So if a requirement requires the completion of another one before one can be completed, I just explained that previously. Then we have time sensitivity. Time sensitivity, it comes with an expiry date. So maybe there's a time that this must be delivered, because imagine you're trying to deliver a solution for Christmas and you're releasing the product in Easter period, right? Who's going to use the product? So the product should have been delivered for Christmas because maybe the scope of that product is to serve the Christmas season. So that means you have to prioritize to deliver around that period. If you deliver a product that is relevant for Christmas and you deliver it in Easter, nobody will buy it. So that's very important. Stability is also there. So stability refers to the likelihood of requirement remaining static. Okay. Then you have regulatory and policy compliance. If you're working in a highly regulated industry, there are several things that you have to prioritize because they are highly regulated. Okay. So that's very important. Now, we will go to highlights of different prioritization techniques that we have considered and we like to work with. One is the Moscow, which you already saw in my presentation earlier. So we have the Moscow technique. Moscow basically means must have, should have, could have, won't have. So must have is saying that these are features that must be included before the product can be launched. Should have is saying that these are features that are not critical for launch, but considered to be important and of high value. Then could have are features that are nice to have and could potentially be included without incurring too much effort or cost. Then won't have are features that have been requested, but they're explicitly excluded from the scope for the planned duration and may be included in the feature phase of the development. So you need to understand this. So based on this assessment or list or criteria, you can use this to define what needs to be done. So if you have 10 items to deliver, the question is, do we need all the 10 items? Is it a must that we must deliver all of them at the same time now? So you need to be able to identify the ones that are must have, the ones that we should have, the ones that we could have, and the ones that won't have. So that means that the one that won't have will be the last. So you don't have to go and do work blindly and go and prioritize what is not really important and go and put that one in the front. That would be a total waste of time and resource. That's why prioritization is very important. There's also the prioritization technique that talks about risk and value driven priority model. So if you have, so look at this for instance, you have the high risk here, the low risk here, low value here, and the high value here. So this is your criteria here. If you have an item that you've assessed and asked yourself some questions with your team, and you realize that that thing will give you high risk and a low value, it's better you avoid it. If that thing will give you high risk and high value, you can do that first. If that thing will give you low risk and low value, you can do it last. If that particular thing will give you low risk and high value, you can do it second. So this is also a different sort of prioritization model that you can apply. There are times whereby you can combine multiple prioritization techniques, which we're going to show you very soon. Then we have benefit and cost-driven priority model. Benefit and cost-driven priority model is very simple. It says that we have high benefit, low cost, high benefit, high cost, low benefit, low cost, high cost, low benefit. Now, the question is, how do you prioritize? If I have any requirement I need to work on or any list of to do, and I know that it's going to give me, I can assess each item and I know that that particular item will give me a high benefit, but it will cost me less. Remember the definition of cost. Cost is the effort and resources that are required to implement a requirement. It could be finance, manpower, or technology. If what I'm trying to do will give me high benefit, but it's actually low cost, that makes sense that I can do it first. I can quickly put it at the top. If it's going to give me low benefit and a low cost, I'll do it last. I'll come back to it later. If it's going to give me high benefit and high cost, I'll do it second, right? If it's going to give me high cost and low benefit, there's no point. I'll try to avoid it and not prioritize it. That's another concept. I hope that you understand. So you can compile your questions and I would love to assess them later. There is another system that we call failure mode and effect analysis. Failure mode and effect analysis is a prioritization technique that was introduced firstly by the Americans. It was mostly used in the military in the US, and eventually the healthcare sector adopted it, and then it started to move from one nation to the other, and it's currently being used in the UK in the healthcare sector as well, and even in the telecoms industry, and several other industries are probably using it now. I personally have used this in the telecoms industry to prioritize. It is very, very simple, uh, quite comprehensive, sometimes considered as complex, but it's very interesting. So failure mode and effect analysis, FMEA, is a systematic proactive method for evaluating a process to identify where and how it might fail, or to assess the relative impact of different failures in order to identify the parts of the process that are most in need of change. You understand better now when I show you. So let me give you this example. So this example here talks about a scenario whereby maybe you're developing a solution or you're working on let's say, software development, for instance. This concept can be applied in any industry, by the way. Okay. If you notice here, we have this first set of column called column B, C, and D. By the way, if you are trying to understand what we have done in development slash solution here, here is the guide written here. For if you're trying to understand what was done for the incident, bugs, and defect, here is the guide written here. So you can go, let's start with the development and solution. What does this mean? So we have prepared 3 columns with different prioritization techniques. This first combined column says you have a new feature enhancement or you're trying to develop a solution. You can use the must-have technique. Remember, must-have is must have, should have, could have, won't have. Again, this is a customized design whereby we have broken it down into different variations. We also have the other section here titled New Feature Enhancement of Development Solution, and we have used the value and the benefit prioritization techniques. Then we also have the uh, frequency of the particular case that you're trying to work on, whether it's in terms of the usage, whether it's in terms of the order, how much was the frequency of the order that comes in, or whether it's in terms of the program that you are currently working on. Then the last segment here talks about a prioritization technique that is called time, effort, complexities, and cost. Now let's look at this. So we use this first 3 column to determine our priorities, but anytime we end up having 2 items with similar priority numbers, we use this one for extra effort to then determine which one would then come first. Because I know you might have a question to say, what if we end up doing a prioritization and we have similar numbers? This section is what we're going to use to determine which one will come first. So let's go back here. Must have. So under must have, we have 2 variables here, 10 and 9. So imagine that I have a particular task. Let me see if I have any sample here. Let's imagine I'm dealing with an issue, and the issue is about, let's say, error login, or I can't even log in into the application. I'm just giving an example. But that's about incident. I don't want to use that example. That's about incident. If you can give me any example of maybe you're developing a toy or you're trying to build a car. So based on the list of your requirements, you can ask yourself this question. Based on that item that I need to work on, is it that I cannot deliver on target date without that solution? If the case is yes, that means that the rating for that particular task should be 10. So you have to write 10. You have to write it down. So let's write 10 down. I'm just saying, okay, this is just an example. So it depends on your assessment on that requirement. If you look at the requirement item, let's say my item is item 1, and you realize that actually I cannot deliver this particular task, or cannot deliver the business case without that particular item, then you will select 9 instead of 10. If the case is that, let's pick anyone here, for instance, that particular item is important but it's not urgent, or it's difficult to implement the workaround. Let's imagine there's a workaround for it. But let's imagine there's no workaround for it and it's important and it's urgent, but not vital or critical. There's no vital or critical workaround and it's not available. Then you might want to choose 8. So these are different levels that determines the number you choose. But in our own scenario, we have gone for 10 because we have agreed that the item maybe we are talking about cannot be delivered. We cannot deliver the project without that particular item. So we choose 10. Now, moving to this next session. So let's imagine that um, the same task that we just used, same item number, if you come here to assess it, based on that particular thing you're trying to work on, do you think that we're trying to measure the impact here? Does that item, does it impact on our internal customer, external customer, our business strategic goals? Uh, does it impact on our cost savings? Does it satisfy our stakeholders' request? Then I will give it a 10 here, or whatever level that it falls under. If it falls under 8, for instance, let's imagine that that particular item, it only impacts on the internal and external customer and maybe just hit one of our business goals. Then I will give it, let's say, 8. Okay, as an example. Now we have 10, 8. Let's look at the last category here. This one is saying that that particular item that you're trying to develop again, what is the frequency of the usage? If it's about usage, how often do they use it? Another question is, if it has to do with like an ordering process, how many times do they order that thing? Or if it has to do with a program, how many times is that thing needed? Is it daily? Is it twice a week? Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly? Once a month? Whatever it may be. Let's imagine that we need that thing on a weekly basis. Then we'll put here 8. So if I want to get my value of my priority number, which we call FMEA, I will do 10 times 8 times 8. Whatever that gives me will be my priority number. So 10 times 8 is 80. 80 times 8 is what? Can you put it in the chat for me? That is 640. So 640 is my priority number. Now I'll move to my next item on my requirement list and I'll go through the same exercise again and get my number. That is how you end up having a similar number like this, whereby each of your items will have your FMEA rating. Now this FMEA rating can be written on your JIRA, on the JIRA title of all of your requirements, so that anytime people look at that ticket, they can know what the priority level of that ticket is. So for instance now, imagine that my ticket, the first one says 640, right? And let's imagine that the next one, let's write 640 here, for instance. I'm just saying, let's imagine that the next one says 250. Next one is maybe around 240. I'm just giving an example, okay? Obviously, because don't forget that sometimes it could be random. It's not always sequential like this. You might try the other one and you end up having 900. You might try another one, you might end up having 600. So by the time you want to prioritize, it's very easy for you to prioritize. What's the highest number here, for instance? Is 900. Out of this, let's imagine these are all your requirements, and you have an item that says 900. So interestingly, that means that the most important ticket that you need to start with is 900, followed by 640, followed by 600, 600, followed by 250, and followed by 6. Now you know the sequence of how you need to deliver your requirements. Okay, that is the concept of applying multiple Python techniques to a particular bunch of requirements. You can do the same concept as well using this template, and this one is recommended for when you're dealing with severity, when you're dealing with issues like bugs and defects. Defects are the, should I say, anomalies that you come across after a product has been launched. Bugs are the anomalies that you come across while you are still developing the solution. Okay, so let's imagine you have too many bugs, too many defects. Where do you start from? This is a simple template that you can also use is a combination of different prioritization techniques you can use to determine your prioritization number. Similar concept, assess what you want to do, choose the one that fit in and get your number. Choose the one that fit in into what you're doing, get your number, multiply all the three numbers together, and then determine your prioritization number. That's how it works. Similar thing. I've explained the guide here. That's it. Now, the question you want to ask me is, what if you get similar prioritization number? What are you going to do? All you need to do is to use this other one here. This one is called time, effort, complexities, and cost. What does this mean? This means that in your own Jira ticket, which represent the requirement that you're working on, you must have assessed that particular task and know how many days would that task take you. So, based on the expertise of whoever needs to work on it, you will have worked out what is the number of days to deliver based on the financial or what we call rate card assigned, allocated to that particular staff, because every business knows what each staff worth. So if a staff is earning, let's say 12, let's just say 1,000 naira per hour. Okay, I'm just saying 1,000 naira per hour, for instance. That means that if somebody tells you that I'll do this work for 2 days, how many hours do we have in a day? How many hours do we have in 2 days? That's about 48 hours. So that means that the man hours is 48 hours, right? And then this person says, no, this is like a template. So your assessment is going to be done separately on each ticket. So you write down that information on your Jira ticket. How do you discover story points? Story point is part of agile management. Now, the way we determine story point is that you can create a formula for yourself. So you can say, for instance, I'll create a formula from 1 to 5. And you can say that number 5 can equal to, let's say, 3 days of work. 4 can equals to 2 days of work. 3 can equal to 1 day of work. While 2 can equal to, let's say, 8 hours. Then maybe 1 can equal to, let's say, 3 hours. You can have any formula. Now, once you agree on that formula, you put it somewhere, right? Then, if you come here to assess a particular sort of task, you want to know there are two tasks that have similar prioritization number. I want to know which one should do first. The question you should ask yourself is that particular task, what is the story point of that task? How many days will it take? How many hours? If but what you have assessed on that task align with any of the formula that we have here, that will determine the one you're going to do. So imagine that you have done your assessment and you now realize that the ticket aligns with this one. That means it says very high. That means that between those two tickets that have the same priority number, this is the one you need to do first based on this formula that you have here. So you can see that, sorry, I think I missed that. So these are the rating that have been listed. Okay. So if it falls on in here, it shows that the rating is going to be 2. If it falls here, the rating is 3. If it falls here, the rating is 10. Can you see that? So it's a formula that we put together that can allow you to know the time, effort, complexity, and costs. So that is an idea of how we do prioritization techniques. If you have any questions, like I said, put them in the chat and then we're happy to take them up. All right. I think we'll stop here at this point to allow you to assimilate and go back and study this in the recording session. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions? If not, I'll be looking forward to receiving your bunch of questions. Have a good evening.